Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Average Movie Review Podcast. Just finished watching Xmen episode 6 for season 2. I gotta say, man, this show, I tell you, it just keeps getting better and better. I don't think there's a show that really just intrigues me more than this show. Um, every episode just keeps taking it up a notch. Like, it's absolutely incredible. Um, in this episode, we get to see Polaris, a mutant that we don't rarely get to see on any sort of like TV or animation type series, right? She's very rare. She was in the original series, but we haven't seen her in a very long time. And, they gave her moment. This Polaris, this is Magneto's daughter, and they've given her a moment to like shine and show us who she truly is. And they do such a fantastic job, right? In this episode, Polaris, who was previously an X-Men, now joined X Factor, gets kicked out of X Factor because of her attack against humans. Or, well, terrorists, really, right? But because they happen to be humans, it looks like she's also following in her father's footsteps, which doesn't look good. Um, but she gets kicked out, she goes back to the X-Men, and then we get to see the Danger Room kind of come alive, right? Because I guess whatever is in Charles's mind, and he transferred into um, the Danger Room, I think telepathically, and that's why the Danger Room kind of became a threat. He kept reenacting the same scene of Magneto dying in front of him and trying to understand it and see what he could do differently, perhaps, or like just to go through it as a therapeutic exercise. But the Danger Room saw it as an opportunity to become something, to teach them how to, defend themselves against the world. But more so, I think it was more for Charles, to help Charles understand that he has to be stronger than what he is right now. And the Danger Room comes alive and, starts attacking the children, and Polaris is there, and she fights back and whatnot. And, it's also a lesson for her, right? Because she's running away from her father's legacy, or her father, who her father is, and she wants to be different, right? And every time she loses control, she becomes like her father, or she thinks she will become like her father. So it's a very tough call for her. Um, I thought, that's a great way of kind of showing how, the father, like the sins of our parents or like our fathers or whatnot, doesn't reflect on who we are, right? And she's going through that battle as Polaris, as the daughter of Magneto, and she has to understand how to kind of navigate through all of this in life and whatnot. But continuing back to the episode, we get to see the Danger Room come alive and, calls herself Danger, and fight back against the mutants and whatnot, and then escapes and then goes to hunt down Charles and Genosha, where he goes because he thinks he might find an answer as to how he can help build or commemorate Magneto's sacrifice and everything that he's done in the past. We get to Genosha, Danger arrives, and they're fighting. And, Polaris and Bishop shows up, and then basically they're not able to defeat the Danger because it ends up taking all of the energy that Polaris and Jean are putting through to it, or like trying to attack it with. And, we get to see a moment where Charles goes to Polaris and says, "You are your father's daughter, right? And, you can do, I have seen your father do amazing things. He has become, he's so much more than what he leads to be, right?" And, he's like, "I can help you understand who he was by sharing my memories with you, while we can, and strengthening you, and you can use your powers to defeat this enemy, because you are stronger than what you think you are," right? And then just seeing Magnus in the flashbacks and everything is it's just so sad. Honestly, it's so sad. I never thought that I would love Magneto as a character, just because he's always been such a big villain. But, like, I've always grown up to see him as a villain. And even Ian McKellen's Magneto, like, it's still such a good character as well, right? Like, amazing, amazing character. And even there, you still see him and you still feel something. But this version of Magneto, like, I am absolutely floored by, like, his lines, his delivery, everything about him is just so different, right? He is a villain out of necessity. He is not a villain because he wants to be. He's a villain out of necessity. He's only protecting what the people that he cares about, right? And unfortunately, like, the human race just won't let them live peacefully, even if they want to be peaceful. They force them to become as bad as they are. And yeah, so, like, we get to see him back in the flashbacks, and Polaris finally kind of understands who her father was. I thought this was kind of the beginning of Onslaught. I don't know if they're going to go down the route where maybe Polaris becomes Onslaught, or maybe this little moment between Polaris and Xavier kind of pushes Xavier to become Onslaught. I don't know how they're going to frame it, if they are going to even bring him into the picture, which I assume that they will eventually, because everything is kind of pointing towards that. Again, this was not like a really episode geared towards Apocalypse in the sense of like the final end game. This was more like kind of like a, here's, like another kind of, I guess, a filler episode in that sense, right? It's just kind of building up to the point, right? And then, we get to see like the true powers of Xavier and Magneto, as I'm sorry, and Polaris as well, and how strong they really are, right? We already knew Charles was always very strong, but like this is just even, we get to see a different light of him. And Polaris says, like, a lot of people don't give him as much as credit as they should, because he is just as strong, if not stronger. And then at the end of the episode, we get to see the formation of X Corp, where now the U.S. government also has problems with that too. Of course, as usual, governments and their fucking problems. But and then they bring it back Apocalypse, right? And then right at the end of it, we get to see that Gambit is back as Death, and Apocalypse has created his one of his horsemen, I guess. But yeah, that's pretty much the episode. And now I know for the last 4 episodes, we'll be solely focused on Apocalypse, and also the relationship between Rogue and Gambit, how that will be affected. Will Onslaught make an appearance? Will he come to life in order to stop Apocalypse? How far will the X-Men have to go? What does X Corp, or how does X Corp kind of fall into this place? Like, do they become different from the X-Men? Are they an upgraded version? Are they a completely different entity? Will they still have the same values? There's going to be a lot of questions that need answers at this point, right? So I think those will be answered in the next upcoming episodes, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see how they play with that, and how they, merge all of these things together to create their story and whatnot. But I thought it was a really good episode. Solid episode in my opinion. I'm super excited. Again, every episode gets better and better, but most importantly, the dialogue, like the writing in this show, is just incredible, and you're just hooked. And what sucks is you gotta wait. You gotta wait for so long for the next episode, because it's a whole week. I know we used to do this when we were kids, but now that I'm adult, I don't have the patience. I just want to watch, but I also understand that, like, doing this kind of brings up the hype, and like you're much more invested than you are in other shows when it's just like kind of all together. Like, you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll just watch the next one, and then you're kind of done. But here, like, you're really invested in waiting. So yeah, I'm super excited for next week. Let me know what you guys thought about the episode. I'd love to hear from you, and catch you on the next one.